Welcome to your darkest days. Please like and subscribe if you want more disturbing stories like these. Also, comment if you would like longer-formed videos. That aside, let's dive right in. I live in the heart of Appalachia, and this is easily the most terrifying story of one of my experiences. By Doobie Doopie Experience. This story may be short, or it may be drawn out. I am recounting these events as I type, as it was honestly one of the most horrifying things I have experienced, and it brings me genuine stress to think about. This happened maybe 2-3 years ago. I live in southern West Virginia, and have for my entire life. The woods and mountains surround every direction you look, and nighttime is a darkness that you can never dream of unless experienced. I was with a friend, I'll call him Mark. Mark was at my house one evening, doing the usual things, watching UFC, playing Xbox, etc. It was extremely late when we finally got bored and decided to go for a walk on a nearby trail to smoke a joint. This is not a particularly long trail, but it is very dense in the woods that surround it, and it is easy to get freaked out when thinking of your surroundings. We finally get to about halfway into the trail, about 30 minutes in, where we stop, pack our joint, and stand on the trail to chill and talk. The forest is very alive tonight. There are always noises in the woods, but the amount of animal activity for the time was unsettling. At this point, it was probably past 1 a.m. This was strange and kind of eerie, but not alerting, as any sort of predatory animal in the area may cause a disturbance. We finish smoking and continue our walk when almost immediately the forest falls dead quiet. And as soon as the forest goes quiet, there is a voice. It almost sounds like a mocking humanoid voice, shaky and uncertain, almost like an old children's toy, like the ones with the crackly speakers and robotic voice, if you know what I mean. This immediately sets us off. We bolt directly the opposite length of the trail, but the sound does not gain distance. It doesn't get closer, per se, but no matter how far we ran down the trail, this eerie voice remains the same volume, going over and over with no quieting or stopping. At this point, I am convinced that we are in genuine danger, something I have felt very few times. Finally, after sprinting for who knows how long, we exit the trail, grasping for breath and almost at the verge of tears of how frightening this was. We begin to exit the trail, and about 5 minutes from the exit, there is a bone-shaking, heart-stopping, murderous scream directly behind us. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. This was not an animal. This was not someone playing or watching a movie. This scream sent birds flying from nests and made my heart drop into my stomach. It was the most genuinely depraved and violent scream that I have ever heard. This is a true story that I have only told to maybe 3 people, all of whom seem to brush it off as false. I've never been a person to push for the existence of the paranormal or spiritual, but I genuinely believe I encountered something inhuman in those woods. Edit. I know I will receive questions such as what the voice was possibly saying or to explain the area and what happened after. I genuinely cannot remember what the voice was saying, if anything intelligible. I don't know if I could understand it then, and I certainly can't recall understanding it after several years of blocking it out of my memory. All that I recall is that it was a fluctuating voice and pitch, shaking, almost just joining sounds together. After running from the scream at the end of the trail, we ran to the car, which was only about 5 more minutes from the trail, so we got there relatively fast from sprinting. I used to have a house in the Appalachian Mountains, and I have some stories to tell. By No Director 4448. Recently, I've seen creepy stories of mysterious creatures living in the depths of the Appalachian Mountains blow up on TikTok, so I wanted to share some stories I have of when I lived there. So, to set the scene, I used to have a house on the Maryland side of the Appalachian Mountains. We were pretty much completely stranded there, as the nearest neighbor was around 15 miles away. so we had to either go on huge supply runs to the nearest supermarket, which was even farther away, or hunt for food ourselves. Also, I forgot to mention, my mom always dreamt of going into a house or cabin in the deep woods, so we decided to live there for me and my sister's summer. Anyway, we alternated between hunting and going for supply runs. Now, I'll start telling the stories. The first one is when me and my mom went for a hike through the woods and found an abandoned Wild West amusement park called Ghost Town, probably like 20 minutes into the hike. Once we got there, we got a weird feeling that I cannot physically describe with words, like it just somehow appeared in front of us. Then, probably no more than 15 minutes later, we found a huge abandoned hospital. We never knew it for the rest of our stay, but those two buildings were the Ghost Town Village located in North Carolina and the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum in West Virginia. We started in Maryland, somehow ended up in North Carolina, and then got to West Virginia and got back to Maryland in less than 2 hours. We stayed surrounded by woods the whole time, not crossing or seeing a single road. That was just the start of the weird shit that happened. The next story is when my mom took me and my sister to a supply run, and while we were driving, we saw a man with a thick jacket, glasses, a balaclava over his face, and a bicycle helmet trying to hitchhike with his thumb out. It was the middle of summer. Me and my sister told my mom to just keep driving, but she pulled over in the road and asked the guy, "Sir, are you okay?" He didn't respond. "Why are you out here dressed like that?" The man finally spoke, but something was off. His voice didn't sound like it belonged to him. It was too high, like it was put through a voice changer. "Ma'am, can I get a ride?" Completely disregarding my mom's question. I looked around him and noticed he had no bike, no car, no hiking stick, no backpack, no nothing, just those clothes. I whispered to my mom to keep driving, and as soon as the man saw that she was trying to drive away, he let out an animalistic, inhuman scream and started to run towards us. My mom floored it to the nearest police station and reported the guy, but they never found him. On our way back to the house, we were on extreme edge, but nothing happened. Then, that night, I woke up to a tapping sound on my window and woke up to the same man standing straight up with his hands on the glass. I lived on the second floor. Now he didn't have his sunglasses on. He also didn't have his eyes. When I noticed it, it immediately fell, and when I looked out my window for it, I didn't see anything. No man, no creature, nothing. Like he just disappeared. I was so shocked and scared I hid under my covers the rest of the night, even though I was 16 at the time. I peeked my head up occasionally to make sure he never came back. Then in the morning I told my mom about it, but it's not like she could do anything about it. The police would never find it, and my parents weren't going out there. This was terrifying, but nothing compared to the next story. I forgot to mention, but we had a dog named Mac. He was a golden retriever and was super friendly and helped us retrieve the animal carcasses when we hunted. One day, I was out hunting with my dad, and we killed a couple rabbits and sent Mac to go get them, but we heard him bark, like he was telling us to go to him instead. We walked over to where he was barking and saw a tree covered with dead, skinned rabbits, each with a shark stick through their head and their eyes removed with a weird symbol carved into the tree. We were speechless and covered our mouths in shock, and then we heard someone whisper to us, "Hey guys, come over here." We hooked up Mac to his emergency leash and ran as fast as we could to our house. I looked behind me for who whispered to us and saw a man with a huge smile on his face and his eyes as wide as possible for a human to open them, staring at me, and then began to run towards us with a knife. My dad grabbed his hand pistol and shot him in the leg, and he fell to the floor while yelling in pain. Once we reached the house, we called the police and told them about it, and they sent multiple officers to search the area, but found nothing. Not the rabbits, no blood, no knife, no fingerprints, not even the rabbits we killed. For the next couple months, we stayed in a relative's house. None of us felt safe anymore. But my dad,
the one who shot the crazy man, was the only one who insisted we stay, said we could defend ourselves, said it was just another crazy and that we should stay the rest of the summer. We agreed, but said if anything else weird or terrifying happens, we go to our house in the city. Then, the final story is what made us finally move out. One Saturday, I woke up and saw my mom missing from the house. My dad and sister said she was just going on an errand and that she'll be back in the afternoon. Afternoon came and she got back. Nothing else eventful happened that day, until night struck. We let Mac out. We just thought he was going to go to the bathroom and come back, but we heard him run away deep into the woods like he was chasing something. I don't know why we didn't chase after him, even after our creepy encounters before this. When he got back, he wasn't energetic. He wasn't acting like him at all. He was mopey, sad, and acting really weird. Normally, we would have just assumed he saw something in the woods that made him upset, but after the previous events, we were on edge. Then, when we all fell asleep, I woke up to footsteps coming up the stairs. I peeked out my door and saw Mac, standing up like a human, his fur gray, his arms longer than they should be, and his head twisted and upright. His walking wasn't right either. He would walk one step, and his body would flop in the direction he stepped. He wasn't walking towards anything either, just roaming the hallway. My heart was beating out of my chest, and I called my sister, and after calling her 4 times, she finally picked up. I don't remember anything I said to her, but what I do remember is sneaking behind the thing pretending to be Mac and met up with my sister. Luckily, the rest of my family slept downstairs, so once I met up with my sister, we were able to wake our parents without going past it. Logically, we stayed in the nearest hotel for the night. We had to go back and get our stuff though, so we went back to the house and found it trashed. The food in the fridge was scattered all over the house, and once we got our stuff, we drove away. I looked back to the house and saw the man, the thing in the winter clothes, staring at me. It was the thing pretending to be Mac. We drove back to our city house and never stepped foot into woods again.
I explored the Appalachian Mountains and discovered a monster. By Arachnite 12. This has been eating me, and I have to take this off my chest. Back when I was around 7 or 8, I always wanted to be an explorer, exploring places man had never tread. When I was 20, I came across a large sum of money and quit college to explore my childhood dream. It worked out for several years, where I explored places such as the Amazon, Himalayas, and I even traveled to the North Pole. A few years ago, I took my last trip. It had been a few months after crossing the Sahara, and I felt like taking a break from these dangerous places and have a nice, relaxing trip. Me and 4 friends bought plane tickets, packed our bags, and flew to Pennsylvania. When we arrived in the airport, we rented a car, got some last-minute supplies, and drove the rest of the way into the mountains. On the way, we decided that we would travel down to Alabama, where we would then travel home from there. Once we arrived in the mountains, we said goodbye to John, who would be taking the car to where we would end, and began walking. For several days, we walked, set up camp, hunted for food, and had fun. About 10 days in, as we were making camp, a herd of deer began grazing nearby. One of us, I forgot who, shot at them, killing one to eat later. Most of the deer ran after the gunshot, but one stayed behind for a few seconds before catching up. Before that one ran, I swear it stared right at me. I couldn't move for what felt like hours, stuck in place by what felt like fear, but I did not know what or why I feared it at the time. But looking back, I understand that it was because its eyes were wrong. They were staring forward, not of the side of its head, but on the front. After this happened, me and the others joked about how that deer was fearless, or how it was deaf and didn't hear the gunshot. After this, we retrieved the deer carcass, cut it up for storage, and at around 10 p.m., we settled in our camp for the night and drifted off. I remember waking up in the middle of the night to chewing. It sounded wet and mushy, like eating raw meat. It came from the direction that we hid the food, and assumed that some animal got into the deer we killed. I knew that trying to fight an animal eating wasn't a good idea, so I just hoped that there would be enough left to eat in the morning and went back to sleep.
When we woke up in the morning, we found nearly half the deer gone, with only one set of prints. What animal could eat half a deer? I asked, not expecting an answer. Maybe a bear. It is nearing fall, so they could be getting ready for winter, Jacob, one of my friends, replied. Wait, look at the tracks. Doesn't that look like hooves? Alex said, confusion cutting across his face. Wait a minute, there's also only 2 feet on these prints. It was walking on only 2 legs. What kind of deer does that? Alex added, fear mixing with his previous confusion. We all decided to leave sooner than later, wanting to get distance between us and whatever did this. We packed much quicker than we did the previous days. To this day, I still can't find some of the pieces to my tent, which were probably left here in our hurry. We also traveled much faster than the previous days. Over the next few days, we traveled across the mountains. Several times I could have sworn I saw a single deer in the corner of my eye, but when I looked, it was gone. Every couple days, we found the half-eaten body of an animal near our camp, which none of us remember being there when we set it up. On the final day of travel, we decided not to set up camp and to hike through the night so we could get to the end of our trip faster and see John. Near the middle of the night, Jacob had strayed behind us. Guys, do you see that? Jacob asked sleepily. It kind of looks like a deer, but it's... What the... We turned around just in time to see him be taken into the forest by something we couldn't make out. We both began running as fast as we could, hoping that we could make it to the end before we got taken as well. After what felt like hours of running, we found what looked to be a human skull in our path, cracked and broken, as if to get inside. Blood was still clinging onto it. We began to run harder, but Alex tripped on a root. I didn't look back. I kept running until by some miracle I reached the car that John was sleeping inside. I began banging on the door to get him to wake up. He unlocked the door and asked, "Where are the others? Why were you running?" "Just drive! They're gone! Dead!" I screamed. Just as the car turned on, a deer on 2 legs, the very same I saw on that fateful day, ran into view. John sped away as I watched the deer stop, get on all 4s, and walk deeper into the mountains. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And let's hope your day doesn't get even darker.